Welcome to the Bookshop at the End of the Internet. This podcast is dedicated to helping book lovers discover new authors. Like all the best bookshops, this podcast is filled with all kinds of books and all kinds of authors. So tune in, browse around, find a new author, and discover a new favorite book at the Bookshop at the End of the Internet. I'm Stacey Horan, author, book lover, and host of the Bookshop at the End of the Internet. This is episode number 153. For more information about this or any of our episodes, go to my website, staceyhoran.com. If you enjoy the podcast, leave us a review, like us on social media, and share us with your friends, family, and fellow readers. In this week's episode of the Bookshop at the End of the Internet, I'm chatting with author Kristen Fogle. Kristen is the executive director of the nonprofit literary center San Diego Writers, Inc. She is also the author of 4 journaling books. Writers, Inc.'s tagline is "Everyone has a story, write yours now." Kristen and I talk about why that is such a bold statement and why she believes that everyone is, or has it within them to be, a writer. Kristen has spent her career helping writers as an editor, an instructor, and a mentor. She discusses the rules of writing, creating dynamic characters, and journaling in whatever format sets you on fire. In this episode, I'll chat with Kristen about her writing journey, her favorite writing prompts, and the importance of feedback, not just what you do with it, but also the people from whom you choose to take it, as well as a few other things. Coming up. Kristen Fogle, I want to thank you very much for joining me today on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I thought what we could do today is start by talking about a role that you play in relation to helping other writers. You are the executive director of a literary center, the nonprofit San Diego Writers, Inc. Inc. I-N-K.
Yes.
The tagline for San Diego Writers, Inc. is "Everyone has a story, write yours now." And I'd like to talk about that a little bit because for most writers, they would probably be in full agreement with that. People who are actively engaged in writing now would probably say, yes, absolutely. For those who have never thought about it before or who aren't writers, those seem like bold statements. One, that everybody has a story to tell, either theirs or someone else's. And 2, that they can and should write it.
Yeah, no, you're right. I am in the camp that believes that, everyone is a writer, and that's a big, audacious statement for all of us to say for whatever reason. I often kind of muse, when someone asks a high schooler what they do, no one blushes when they say, "Oh, I'm a basketball player or a gymnast," or things like that. But, the little 15-year-old that says, "Oh, I'm a writer," we think that that's, like, "Oh, sure you are." We just don't value writers in the same way. We've kind of put them on a pedestal. So I just, again, want to encourage anyone who has the inkling to write. You definitely have things to write about, and you should. And so that's what we kind of aim to do at Writers Inc. is to get new writers. We also work with advanced writers, but anybody who wants to write can and should be able to.
Let's talk about where they should start. So for someone who either hasn't written before, not really, not outside of, say, school, or someone who hasn't written in a long time, what's the best way to flex your muscles and get started?
Yeah, I mean, without plugging us too much, but also plugging us, I'll tell you a little bit about what we do and some ways that you can start there or you can kind of replicate what we do. So we run programs every single day of the week. Some of them are classes and workshops, other are reading critiques, people that are, actively workshopping their writing. But other times during the week, we have these writing practice sessions. So we have about five of them that go on during the week. And these are just free or low cost opportunities to come in. We read the rules for writing, and then someone gives a prompt, and people write for about 17 minutes. So I would encourage people to start there, either with one of our workshops like that are online, or to find something similar, even just picking up a writing prompt book and just starting.
And let's talk about writing prompts. Give us an example. And I'm curious if you personally have a favorite that you either like to use yourself or you like to use with classes.
Ooh, yeah. So a writing prompt is just a word, a phrase, a sentence, a suggestion. It can be visual. I've used paintings in classes to work as writing prompts. It can be anything essentially that sparks writing. And this isn't like 5 paragraph essay status, you don't have to see a picture of a star and write about a star for 45 minutes. It's just wherever it takes you, right? The picture of the star might take you back to childhood and you start talking about that, and then you go on to something else. So it's just something to get the pen moving. For my own personal practice, I go all over the place. One of the places that I like to write is one of the missions here in San Diego County. And so I picked up a saint book that was there and just kind of started writing to some of the saints because there's a saint for everything, right? A saint for travel and a saint for nurses and a saint for this and that. So that's kind of been my writing prompt, my start at the moment. It's been really interesting to see where it's gone.
And you also mentioned that somebody reads the rules of writing, which is an interesting concept, the rules
Sure.
of writing.
Yeah. Yeah. So there, spoiler alert, there are no real hard and fast rules, but there are reminders that we give during every writing prompt session. And these are rules that are adapted from Natalie Goldberg's The Wild Mind and added to by writing practitioners over time. So these are just things like be specific, and then things like date your page. So there are no hard and fast rules, just things to pay attention to in your writing.
And if somebody is curious about this and they get started, what do you say to them to encourage them to keep going? If somebody says, well, okay, how long do I have to write? How often do I have to write? Does it have to be perfect? First time I do it. How do you explain the process of writing to somebody who comes to it new?
I think one, a lot of my workshops are kind of telling people, giving themselves permission to write and get out of that structure, that you have to be good at it, that you have to write every day, that you have to write for a certain amount of time, that you know, must write by hand, must whatever. So I would say the most important thing to do if you would like to write and write regularly is to put it on your calendar, just like anything else. Make a date with your writing. When I'm doing writing practice, or writing classes rather, I say just start small, right? Like if you were running a marathon, we wouldn't be out there every day for 2 hours running, right? So I say write for 5 minutes a day. Start really, really small. Go gentle. Be good to yourself.
A lot of writers I know, they make classroom visits, they talk to kids about writing. I've heard a number of them say things like, well, start a journal, keep a diary, do something like that. And one of the things I usually tell kids is just keep a journal. You never have to read it again. You can just put stuff down on the page, even if it's nothing more than like a to-do list for the day, but it
Yeah,
gets your mind working. And I've also said just it could be anything. It can be about you. It can be about something you've seen, something you've thought, something you worry about. It can be a completely made up story. So the idea of journaling, I think for people at first seems a bit scary. Like they put it down and it's going to have to be saved for posterity.
right.
But but it's really not that at all. I don't think it's meant to be that unless that's how you personally have designed it. Is
Right.
that is that true? Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, in some of my classes, I've even said, hey, you might be in a space where you feel unsafe, where you think that your partner might read it or that it might just get out there. There's a lot of fear around who's going to read this, right? So I say, write it and burn it in that case. I say, hide it in your car somewhere where they won't find it. The important part is just to get it down. And then, I'm big on journaling, but I'm also big on what's the form and structure that's going to able you to tell your story. So is that, it may not be writing per se, but is that a voice memo type situation where that's easier for you to do and then you can transcribe it later? Are you more of a visual artist? Do you kind of need to go the graphic novel route and get some of your thoughts out that way? Is it poetry? So, I'm all for journaling. I journal myself, but what works for you? What lights you up? What excites you?
What are some of the essential skills that you think writers should learn, even if they don't necessarily want to seek out a publishing contract with a traditional publisher? But what are some of the things that make writers into good writers, better writers?
Sure. Um, Dynamic characters, uh, characters that have uh, believable, unique traits. So, good characters are key. One thing that I'm seeing a lot that I feel like was a suggestion people have heard a lot of times, but I keep seeing it in editing that I do is this concept of, showing and not telling us. So I've got a piece that I'm reading that has a lot of really amazing action going on, but I'm hearing it all in the dialogue. I'm not with the characters. I'm not physically going through the scene with them. I'm not getting the sense and the smells and what they're experiencing and witnessing it firsthand. I'm hearing it in the dialogue after the fact. And so I think you need to take us with you as readers. I think maybe also to that point, abling your readers are smart, so you don't need to give them everything. Let them deduce what's going to happen.
Do you find that writers master skills and stay masters at those things? Or have you found that there are things that writers need to continue to learn over and over again? Are there things that we may remember to do it right this one time, but are there things that we need to keep remembering, keep learning?
Hmm. That's an interesting question. I'm not sure if I've really thought about that much, but if I'm thinking about it now, so grammar is not something necessarily that I'd have to revisit or relearn over and over again. But I mean, I think we're always learning, and there are so many different facets of writing. And I think one of the things that I like about Writers Inc. is we'll have many different teachers that come and teach about the same subject matter because everybody approaches it a little bit different, right? Just like my show don't tell example from the last question. One teacher is going to come at that material in a completely different way, and you're going to receive it differently from a different person. So I guess I don't know if we need to keep mastering things, but I think we can always be looking at the same concepts in different ways and grow in our writing that way.
When writers discover what it is that they are good at, what they do well, more than likely, I assume, they also discover what they don't necessarily do well, what they need to work on. What do you tell writers about how to improve or get help or seek assistance with the parts of the writing that don't come as easily, that they struggle with, that they don't do as well?
Sure. I think that this is where the read and critique process is really strong. Like I'd mentioned before, I think we have about 13 different read and critique groups. So these are groups that workshop weekly or monthly. all or some of the group will bring in pages, and then the rest of the group will give them constructive feedback. So that's kind of one way to go about it. But I think that before doing that whole process, when you're putting your writing out into the world, it's important not only to get feedback, but to know where in the process you're getting feedback. That can kind of make or break it, and then who you're getting feedback from. So there are people in my network that I think are highly intelligent and amazing people, but I won't necessarily go to them for feedback because it will probably hinder my progress. And on the other end of the spectrum, there are people that I know that will be wildly supportive, but also call me out in the places that I need to be called out. So identifying where in the process, who to go to, and then yeah, that the a reading critique, if it appeals to you, is a great start also.
How do you find new writers respond to this idea that writers find their own voice through telling stories, through practicing their craft? It seems it's an odd turn of phrase, given that what we're doing is actually writing,
Hmm.
to say that you find your voice as a writer. Have you seen writers discover that? Have you witnessed that sort of aha moment when they realize, okay, this is how I write. This is the way I write. This is my writer's voice.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I would say more holistically on the writer's ink end, I feel like those discoveries are being made a lot. Some of my classes that I'm teaching are more journal writing, so it's a little more reflective. So it's not necessarily finding your voice in fiction, but just discovering that you have a voice and a story worth telling. So yeah, but the voice is very important to find in writing. And it's exciting when writers do that.
When did you start writing? Is this something you've always wanted to do? And when did you consider yourself a writer?
So I started journaling at a really young age, probably 7 or 8 years old in my American Girl little journal. And then I started to write fiction, later on. I would write horror tales about my classmates and things like that. And then come high school, I was the opinions editor of the paper, and I thought it was very, very clever, Stacy. I had this column called Dr. Love, where, I would make up the questions and answer them and everything. And I thought, no one in the school knows who I am, and everyone knew that it was me, just absolutely everyone. I wasn't fooling anyone. And then it wasn't really until after college, I got a communications degree, still didn't know what I wanted to do, and started interning at a magazine. And kind of what happened with Writers Inc., falling into the role that I have now, I fell into the editor position there. The editor left all of a sudden and left my 22-year-old self to, figure out how to put together magazines in these 15 markets that we had. So I learned very quickly how to write quickly, effectively from that experience. But I'm not sure precisely when I started calling myself a writer. I mean, it's something that I've always done. So, yeah, here we are.
And you have several books out. Let's talk a bit about those. Share for us what your first one was that you put out, and let's take them in turn.
Sure. So the first one is Dare to Write Creative Writing Prompts for Young People and Word Rebels Everywhere. So that one's a little bit different than the other three. The other three are journals, essentially. And this one is different in that it's geared for a younger audience, but anyone really that's just trying to get into writing. And it's structured by genre. So there are chapters on romance and sci-fi and poetry and whatnot. And then there are also these little inserts that give you some activities about how to create a better character or, how to figure out your setting and things like that. So that was a really fun and challenging book to write. So yeah, that was the first one.
How long did it take you to put that together? And what was that initial idea for writing it?
Sure. So it was, I always knew I'd probably write something about the writing process, but my publishing process is much different than other people's. I was approached to write this book. They approached me with an idea. I had a very quick turnaround time to do it. I want to say something like 4 or 5 weeks.
Ooh.
And yeah, so it's a very unique process. And I've been working with this same company ever since to create my books. So it's been challenging, but really rewarding.
And then the other three you mentioned are journals, but they are geared to different audiences.
Yes. So this is my life is more kind of looking at your life start to, where you are now. So it goes from childhood to young adulthood to where you are. And it just kind of looks at everything. So I would say it's ideal for people that want to write a memoir, want to know where to start, who are interested in a keepsake and a hand-me-down, or just people who are curious in general. And then 3 and 4, it's a mom's journal, and the fourth one is for dads. And so those are fun because I think when people look at those journals, they assume, oh, okay, all of the chapters are going to be about the kids and about what that's like and everything. And what I love about the way that each of those is structured is that parts look very similar to This Is My Life. And there's only one chapter in each that's actually devoted to raising children. So I'm a big proponent that mothers are so many other things than just mothers. So I wanted the books to reflect that.
Is there part of the writing process that you enjoy more than others?
Writing's hard, right? It doesn't always click. I think something that I've appreciated about these books is writing to a deadline. I think that that's why I was successful as writing as many pieces as I did with the magazines, because you had to get this product out there, out the door in X amount of time. And it's the same with the books. Those are both on a deadline. So I think that I enjoy writing to that deadline. I think left to my own devices sometimes, they would just, everything would just kind of linger out there and wouldn't happen. So I like that. And I find, and this is the way that I teach also, the best ideas always come at the very last minute. I'll walk into a classroom just with loads of curriculum and will often just throw it out the door and create something new 5 minutes before the class starts. I'm kind of the same way when I write, and that's kind of risky and fun and scary and rewarding.
Is there any part of this writing process that you dislike or struggle with, even after all the writing you've done?
Um, I think there's just a general annoyance when it just doesn't come, when the ideas aren't there, when you just feel like you're just generally sucking at it. I don't think that that feels good for anybody. So yeah, it's just a constant reminder to just keep writing. I think there was a study done, Stacey, of individuals who wrote just when they were inspired versus people that just wrote every single day. And the people that wrote every single day actually came up with more ideas and more content and things like that than the people that just wrote when they were inspired. So it's really a testament to just sit down and write even when you don't think that you have anything.
Do you still have goals for yourself as a writer? Are there things that you want to do in your writing journey?
Oh, Stacey, I have goals upon goals. My goals have goals. They have, oh yeah, the tree branches just never end. Yeah, I would love to write a memoir type piece. I'd love to keep writing more writing journals. I work with some kind of unique populations. One that I've loved over the years is wounded warrior women. So I'd love to write something that would help that population in particular. I also work with or prior to the pandemic, actually, the Brain Injury Foundation, which is a neighbor of ours where we're located at the Arts District in Liberty Station in San Diego. So potentially a journal for that population. So yeah, I really find the writing journal process really fulfilling and interesting. And there are just so many populations and so many people that can benefit. So I would love to keep going in that direction.
If people are interested in the San Diego Writers Inc. or learning more about you and your books or things that are going on with the Writing Center, where should they go to find that information?
So the easiest thing to do is just to go to san diego writers.org. So that's san diego writers.org. And then I'm at kristenfogle.com. So you can find lots of information about all the classes and workshops, both that I do and that Writers Inc. offers there. And also, I just always encourage, I'm never in the game of being in competition with organizations that do what we do. And uh, the silver lining of the pandemic, I guess I should say, is that all of these writing organizations that are all over the country are offering classes on Zoom now or recorded. So more than ever, you can get content from these really amazing writers just from where you're at, from your desk. So I'd encourage people to go to us, but I'd encourage people to, just look for writing centers all over. There's lots of great education out there right now.
Writers Inc. does a lot of different things. They offer a lot of different courses and events, and there are different instructors involved. Tell us a little bit about some of the things you have coming up, for example. What are some of the things on offer?
Yeah, so like I said, we're always offering workshops, classes, free write-ins, things like that during the week. But in June, we have a couple of really fun events that I'm looking forward to. So on June 5th, which we haven't even announced yet, we'll be doing Blazing Laptops, which is our annual write-a-thon. So it's a fundraiser for us. It's a community building event, if anything, this year. And we're going to be doing it at Lestat's in Hillcrest. So from 10 to 4 on June 5th, people can come, they'll pay $150. They can write for the day to prompts or just focus on their own work. And it's just a lot of fun to be in a room with other writers, especially the last couple years. We've done it online and it's been fun, but it hasn't been the same sort of energy. So that's one that I'm looking forward to. The other is we produce an annual anthology every year. And so that anthology event is coming up again. And just like Blazing Laptops, we haven't done one in person in a while. So that is June 25th, I want to say. I'm sorry, June 27th. It's a Monday. We'll be doing it at the Lightbox Theater, which is located at Liberty Station. And we'll hear from our Year in Ink Volume 15 writers. And so that'll be really exciting and fun. And I'm really looking forward to seeing everyone.
And for those not necessarily in the San Diego area, you all offer stuff online as well, if people are interested.
We do, yes. Most of our programming is online now, so everyone can check that out at san diego writers.org.
And if people are looking to purchase a copy of one of your books, where can they go to buy them?
Sure. So they can be found on my website, and also Amazon has all of them. So if you just input my name, Kristen Fogle, my author page will pop up and you can purchase books there. And I will thank you for it in advance.
Well, Kristen, I want to thank you for being here today on the podcast. And I want to wish you luck with your own writing journeys. Congratulations on everything you've accomplished so far, and best of luck with the rest of it.
Thanks, Stacy. Take care and thanks for having me.
The Bookshop at the End of the Internet is a podcast dedicated to helping book lovers discover new authors. Like any good bookshop, this podcast features a wide variety of books by the equally varied and interesting authors who felt compelled to write them. This podcast gives you a chance to meet these wonderful writers and discover your next must-read book. Listen to the authors describe their books and tell you their stories in their own words. My interviews feature books from all genres and authors from all walks of life, including those who are indie published, as well as those published by small presses and large publishing houses. Looking for unique, not so easy to find books for yourself, a friend, or a book club? Tune into this podcast and find your newest favorite author or maybe a soon-to-be bestseller. This podcast, like all the best bookshops, is filled with all kinds of books and all kinds of authors. Tune in, browse around, find a new author, and discover a new favorite book. You never know what treasures you might find in the bookshop at the end of the internet.